What's up, fight fans? We got another episode here of the Fight Corner, episode number 2, coming at you. Today, we're going to be taking a little look at tonight's UFC card, UFC 297, Strickland du Plessis from Toronto, Canada. Going to have a look at a few fights that I'm looking forward to on the card, go over some of my picks for that. And we'll end off with going over the latest UFC 300 fight announcements. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Right, UFC 297 goes down tonight from Toronto, Canada. Strickland versus du Plessis for the middleweight title, and Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva for the vacant women's bantamweight title. Not a bad card. Not outstanding either, but the last time the UFC was in Toronto, I believe, was way back in December of 2018, UFC 231, Holloway versus Ortega. I think the UFC would have liked to have had to stack this card a little bit more, but with UFC 300 coming up and some other high-profile fights booked between now and then, this is probably the best they could have done. I'm sure the UFC would have loved to have had Volkanovski and Topuria on this card, but Volk definitely needed some more time. After that KO loss to Islam Makhachev, he did definitely need a bit of time off to recover for that. Having Jan Blachowicz versus Alexander Rakic would have also been another great addition to this card, but obviously Jan getting that shoulder surgery kind of put this one out of commission. But Rakic will be going up against Yuri Prochazka at UFC 300, so that is something to look forward to, at least going down the line. Some fights that I'm looking forward to on this card will be starting on the prelims. Charles Jourdain versus Sean Woodson. Very interesting battle here. Woodson with that massive 78-inch reach could be tough for Jourdain to break through. Not only will Woodson have that considerable 9-inch reach advantage, he's also considerably taller than Jourdain, coming in at 6'2" compared to the 5'9" of Jourdain. I am very interested to see what Jourdain's team has come up with in terms of a game plan to kind of nullify those advantages, get him on the inside. And if he can't beat that jab and the leg attacks of Woodson, this could be a very difficult night for Jourdain. But I believe he is coming in as the favorite in this battle. But again, tough fight, one I'm really looking forward to. The fight kicking off the main card, Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev, or Ivoyev, I'm still a bit confused on that one, has all the makings of an absolute banger. Allen coming off that loss to Max Holloway when he was so close to getting that featherweight title shot, will definitely be looking to regain some of his momentum in the division, and Evloev is also looking to make a statement. He is undefeated in his career, but he has been a decision machine since coming into the UFC, and he will need to do something special to really start getting the attention not only of the UFC matchmakers, but of the North American, European fans also. I mean, he's obviously got that massive pull behind him in Russia, but to be a worldwide star, you really do need to start putting some of those finishes together on your resume. He's a very marketable contender, but as I said, it's the finishes that really make you stand out in this organization. Ivoyev probably did lose a bit of shine in his last fight with Diego Lopez, who did really push him all 3 rounds, even though Lopez was only coming in on 5 days' notice, and Evloev did win that fight via unanimous decision, but it was Lopez who was the talk of the MMA community after that fight. Movsar is going to have to look to do something to kind of get himself into title contention, and a finish over Allen would do that, although I find that highly unlikely, to be perfectly honest. Neil Magny and Mike Malott will be another great fight on the main card. Magny being considered one of the welterweight division's gatekeepers, most wins in the welterweight division, trumping George St. Pierre for that accolade. Will Mike Malott be able to get the finish in this fight is a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. Ian Gary wasn't able to do it, one of the top rising stars in the welterweight division. And if Malott can stop Magny, it will put him in that top 15 and give Canada some real good hope for getting another champion in the UFC. And you know that's what the UFC really wants, and they've been craving a Canadian star since GSP left. It's a massive market for the organization, just like the Australia and the UK fans. They really support their own massively, so it could be a huge stepping stone for Malott going forward. And I do expect him to get the victory here, but we'll get into more of that when I go through my picks for the card. Chris Curtis and Marc-Andre Barriault is another one that I'm looking forward to. Curtis coming off a very tough 2023 with a decision loss to Kelvin Gastelum, and then a no contest after an accidental head clash in his fight with Nasruddin Imavov. I do expect Curtis would want to get his 2024 off to a good start, and he can really get that done in this fight. On the other end of the spectrum, you got Marc-Andre Barriault, who had a very successful 2023 with a stoppage win over Julian Marquez and a decision win over the very tough veteran Eric Anders as well. The co-main event for the vacant Women's Bantamweight Championship, to be honest, is not one that I'm particularly interested in. No disrespect to either of these women in this fight. It's just, for some reason, not piquing my interest. And I think that is the feeling or sentiment from a lot of the MMA fans. I think a lot of them are really hoping to see Bueno Silva take on Juliana Pena. They've been having a lot of heat going back and forth. And for whatever reason, it just seems like Pennington is just not that big to many fight fans in MMA. I mean, I respect her a lot, but I've just never really been that interested in any of her fights, really. I don't know why. It's nothing personal against her. It's just one of those things. It's unexplainable. I do feel that maybe a lot of fight fans kind of are in the same boat as that. To be honest, I'm not really sure why I'm bringing this fight up in this segment for fights I'm looking forward to. I have no idea why I'm doing that. But the main event, that promises to be an absolute banger, and I cannot wait for it. There's a lot of heat on this one, especially after Dricus and Strickland had their little bust up in the crowd at UFC 296. Not that this fight needed anything else to make it a big fan favorite, but that probably did put it over the edge for a lot of fans who are maybe more in the casual bracket or, not really too interested. But things like that, they do get the average person kind of pumped up to wanting to see these things. Some people probably did find it in bad taste as well, but this is the kind of thing that happens sometimes in the fight game, and these things happen. Dana probably shouldn't have sat them so close together, and he realized that. He mentioned that in the post-fight press conference at 296. But with Strickland's win over Izzy and Duplessis' destruction of Robert Whittaker, that was all I needed to get amped for this one. And it will be really interesting to see how this one plays out. Duplessis knows how to step on the gas and go for the kill. Got a lot of power, really good with feints and stance switching. Can kind of keep Strickland on his toes a bit. But Strickland just seems to have that ability to almost freeze some people with that awkward Philly shell style and quick 1-2s. It's caused a lot of problems for a lot of fighters. Some people have been able to crack it. Obviously, Alex Pereira cracked it big time and cracked him. But, Dricus with that much more traditional kickboxing style, throwing some unorthodox strikes, does get hit quite a bit, more than he probably should. But yeah, this fight has all the makings of an absolute classic. You could see in the pre-fight press conference, Strickland is adamant that this is going to be to the death. He is one of those guys, though. He's definitely someone who has that mentality where this is a kill or be killed environment. Not really so much along the lines of, it's competition and it's a better man wins. I think he can flick that switch to be life or death inside the octagon, which I think is another one of the reasons that makes him a big fan favorite. Right, moving on to my picks for this card. Please do not take any of this advice. I am never right about these kind of things. It's just for a bit of fun. I'd love to lay an all-Canadian parlay on this card, but I think there are just some fights that are a bit iffy, so I don't think that will be in my plans. But who knows? There's still a couple hours left before the fight starts, so we'll see about that. I would lean towards Strickland taking the victory and defending that middleweight title. The odds do seem to vary depending on what sites are going on. It looks like it's basically a pick'em between a lot of the sites, but I have seen somewhere where he is as high as a minus 130 favorite. I'll be taking Mayra Bueno Silva at minus 166 for the women's vacant bantamweight title. Mike Malott over Neil Magny as a minus 250 favorite. Chris Curtis and Marc-Andre Barriault. Tough to take a winner in this one, but I think if you're going to lay some money down on this, I would take a bet on this fight to go the distance. And I'll be taking the underdog Arnold Allen at plus 140. I can't really see Allen dropping this one after that loss to Holloway, especially with a possible number one contender spot for the winner on the line in that very tough featherweight division. And 2 losses in a row, that will definitely knock you back quite a bit down the line. Right, on to just a little bit of news from the weigh-ins, and then we'll be talking about the recent fight announcements for the UFC 300 fight card. With regards to the weigh-ins on Friday, Malcolm Gordon came in at 127.5, and Ramon Tavares came in at 139 3/4, which is basically not even trying to make weight. I don't know what excuse he could possibly have. They were the only fighters missing weight. Gordon will be forfeiting 20% of his purse, and Tavares will be giving up a massive 30% of his purse. Very costly mistakes, especially for Tavares, who is going to forfeit that 30% of his purse on his UFC debut. Priscilla Cachoeira also, while not missing weight, gave notice that she was not able to make the flyweight limit, and her bout with Jasmine Jasudavicius has been moved up to a bantamweight fight. The UFC 300 fight announcements that came out from Dana White. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF belt, and Jim fucking Miller versus Bobby Green. Both great fights, and while I'm excited and intrigued by both, I am not totally convinced that this is the right move for Max. After a great 2023, which saw him stop the Korean Zombie and get a decision win over Arnold Allen, he is right there for another crack at the featherweight title. Granted, only if Volk does not defend against Topuria next month at UFC 298. And the last time we did see Max at lightweight, it was a great fight, but he did come out on the losing end of a 49-46 decision on all 3 judges' scorecards for the interim lightweight belt against Dustin Poirier. And it didn't seem like Max's power really carried up to that next division. And the power is what you need to stop or slow down Justin, because he will just keep coming if you can't put anything on him. And that's just a fact. For Justin, I also feel this is a slightly odd choice after Islam did say that Justin would be the next for a shot at the lightweight belt, stating he would like to fight in June, most likely on that moved Saudi Arabia card, which is definitely going to be stacked. That's going to be a savage card. But yeah, this could be enough time for him to do a turnaround if he avoids any serious injury or a loss, but it is a bit of a gamble. Especially when you're just defending the BMF belt, which, really doesn't mean anything, really. To the fans, it might mean a little something, but to me, it's just something that the UFC uses to fill spaces on a card when they don't quite have the star power to fill it. It's just something that they can do to throw in there to kind of appease the fans. So it's a bit of a weird choice for both, I do feel. But Jim Miller, Bobby Green, great battle between 2 veterans and a real great addition to the card. 2 fan favorites also as well. Miller fighting on all the big milestone cards now, UFC 100, 200, and 300. Having wins on both UFC 100 over Mark Danzig and 200 over Takanori Gomi. Looking for the hat trick here on all 3 of the big century cards for the UFC. And Bobby Green coming off that tough KO loss to Jalen Turner. A fight I don't know if he should have taken. I mean, it's no different. It's still a tough fight. But I mean, I think taking any opponent on short notice can be a bit of a gamble, especially when you're looking to fight someone like Dan Hooker. You're training for that. And then you get Jalen Turner, who has a bit more of a reach, bit taller, and a much different style. I'm not a fan of any fighter taking short notice fights, to be perfectly honest. I think that's why you have training camps, and also why, coaches and teams spend so much time creating game plans for specific opponents. One thing that you might be training on that you've noticed on tape study will probably not work against other fighters. So again, do whatever you'd like, but me personally, I'm just not a fan of any fighter taking a short notice fight, whether you've been in training camp and your opponent's changed, or you've been offered a short notice fight. Maybe you haven't been training properly, you haven't been, in the gym as much as you should be, your weight might be a bit high. Not a fan, just not a fan. Now, the 300 card is really starting to take shape quite nicely, in my opinion. I know a lot of people have some issues with this card. It's not good enough for such a marquee event and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. People just like to complain, to be perfectly honest, I think. But let's just have a look at what the card looks like at the moment as it stands. We have the rumored but not confirmed welterweight title fight between Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. And then all these other fights are announced and confirmed. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF belt, Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic, Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan, Weili Zhang versus Shan Yaonan for the women's strawweight title, Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling, Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage, Davidson Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt, and as we just mentioned, Bobby Green and Jim Miller. I mean, that's only 9 fights that are announced so far, and those are all bangers, in my opinion. Those could all be headline fights for fight nights or for a UFC pay-per-view, in my opinion, anyways. And there's still some spaces to fill. That's 9 fights. We got to go at least 12 fights deep on this, so that there's going to be a few more fights added to this, and it would not surprise me at all if the UFC had something special cooking in the back. They didn't announce a lot of the fights for UFC 200 until quite late, and I mean, even the announcing the return of Brock Lesnar wasn't until UFC 199. I really, really hope that's not what they have planned for this one. I mean, please, God, no, just let those people stay in the WWE and do their thing over there. We don't need this anymore. I beg of you, please, God. I do think they will have some late announcements coming up, and who knows, there might even be one at this event. They might run a promo for something, but I do believe it'll probably be a bit closer to the date when they announce these. I'm sure the fighters probably already know, but they're just waiting for the perfect time to kind of announce these. So I would just preach some patience to everyone. Just take a breath and relax. I'm sure this card is going to be an absolute banger. God forbid we have any injuries or anything like that. But if it stays like this and they add a few more fights onto it, I think we're looking for a really great card here. So relax. Right, that does it for another episode. Thank you guys all again for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I am currently working on a video version of this podcast, not with me on video, thank God, but just so we can input some of the clips from the fights and other video content as well on there, make it look a bit more professional, obviously, than just how it is at the moment. But yeah, again, thank you guys all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check us out on social media at Fight Corner Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And we'll see you for a breakdown episode after the fights tonight. Hopefully that'll be coming out Sunday evening or Monday, just depending on time constraints for myself. But yeah, thank you guys all again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.